Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. All right. So, first of all, thank you to all of you who are going to make a tireless commitment to being a evaluator during the playoffs. I've been around for a while, and I've been on the playoff evaluation board. I know the stress involved in trying to get all those things done in the time frame in which they're asked. And I know there are some that aren't appreciative of the work, but I think football's got it right. I say this all the time. That this is the only sport that I know of in Georgia where our peers are evaluating us for the opportunity for a state championship. And so thank you for that. And I'm excited about, the opportunity to give you guys just a little bit of feedback from the referee perspective. For those of you that are referees, you are going to see a lot of what, I mean, we talked about at camp. I don't have a lot to to go into a lot of details, but I am going to reiterate what I talked about to the referees at camp. And one of the biggest areas of constructive criticism or just complaints, from people who are evaluated, and I heard it, in every one of my referee sessions, is that, you get feedback on your evaluation and it doesn't match what's in the manual. It's not what we talked about at camp, or I didn't get any feedback at all. I just got a rating. I didn't get any feedback, or, so there's just a lot of things, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. So the importance of giving feedback and making sure that the comments that you're making are is what's in the manual, regardless of what position it is. I think that's what gives an evaluator credibility. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we talked about at camp this summer, and from my seat. And I'll give you guys an opportunity to ask questions, or if you have a question, feel free to speak up. But what I have highlighted here is what I want to go over tonight with you. And it has been spoken for the last several years to the referee position. And I say this as well, the referee doesn't have to be the best official on a crew. That's probably evident with most of the crews that I work on all the time. But the referee can't be the weak link. The referee has to be good in so many areas, leadership and management of his crew and game management. And sometimes those things are easily saw on crews, both the good and the bad side of that, but sometimes they're not. But the one thing that I always tell the referees, that you got to make sure that the mechanics are based on what our manual says. I think we've went to great extremes to try to make sure that everybody has the mechanics manual and that we're teaching everything that is in the mechanics manual. And I commend James and Kevin and Jay for helping us to be able to do that. But really, what I talked about all summer from the referee perspective is exactly what's in the manual. And we didn't read it out of the manual. We walked through position by position by position from every aspect of every play, and we did it from memory. And then we went back and we looked at the slides to make sure that everyone knew. So we got to make sure we're all on the same page. You got to know what they are. And one of the things that we talked about last year was making sure that every referee developed a pre-snap routine. And if you do that, that certainly is evident on film whenever you can see that you're developing a pre-snap routine. All right, so I'm going to move on here. I don't know why my slide there. Let's get over here. All right, so we talked about the manual. We talked about the changes from the year before. And I hear this all the time. They'll say, "Well, an evaluator gave me a ding because we used a hat, in the past or whatever," and that holds true for all of these. So again, I'll speak to this kind of at the end as far as, my thoughts on how you on dinging people and how when it becomes when it becomes truly something that they should be penalized for. If you do by chance get the opportunity to see penalty enforcement on a video on one of your reviews, if you see a referee using the dead ball signal before a pre-snap foul, we have been talking about this for 2 years. So if they do that, certainly it's worthy of being noted. If they just do it one time, okay, maybe it's not a ding. But if it is multiple times, then I think that's something that definitely would be a difference maker. We talked about that. It doesn't really pertain to what I'll be talking about tonight. But then we also want to make sure that on film that we see the crew, the referee, and the umpire making sure that we are using these hash marks. And I'll speak to that a little bit more in a few minutes as well. One of the things that we've talked about in the last couple of years is the referee waving off the umpire or not waving off the umpire. We've kind of loosened up on that a little bit, especially whenever there is not a huddle. Some referees use the wave off all the time. Some don't. When I think it's important that you're using the wave off, if you have teams that are running a no huddle and they are trying to go fast, it is vital that the referee be in his home position before the umpire has backed away. And you should see them using a wave off, or there should be some acknowledgement that you feel like that they're truly in sync with that. If there's an issue with that in their games and you've got the umpire not in his position and they're snapping the ball, then that's a problem because they're not utilizing this mechanic that is important, I feel like. These are 5 things or 4 things that we talked about that are not in the mechanics manuals. And again, we may or may not see these things, but I reiterated it every camp. And I know these are probably not things that I'd, mark off. I mean, I think this year we're using tenths of a point for, grading rather than 5/10. At least that was my understanding. And so, but again, if they are not doing these items right here consistently, in my opinion, they are choosing not to do what the manual is asking them to do. Does that mean they don't move on? Does that mean they're not quite? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that I think from a training committee perspective, I wouldn't want to see a white hat working a state championship game that can't do what's in the manual, regardless of what it is. That's my personal opinion. And so I don't know how you grade them from that perspective. But at any rate, we talked about these specifically. They should always walk out with the captains on their left shoulder. They should let the coin hit the ground. They will always signal touchdown on extra points and field goals. And we have a timeout. We'll give 3 chucks, when we have a timeout. And again, these are things that the training committee wanted to make sure that we were doing. All right. So the big thing for me, whenever you look at a referee on huddle when you're reviewing or whatever, if they're not consistently in the right place for their home position, then that is a major problem. Because they should know it. If they have all been to camp, they've all heard it. We've looked at it on film. We've shown them clearly where they should be. All right. So, and we walked through this specifically at camp this year. And I had, before I ever showed this slide, we walked through this with everybody in the room, and I called on different referees to make sure that we were doing it. And so it's just that simple. A referee should be in the middle of the field on the opening kickoff. He's going to blow his whistle and he's going to go, and then he's going to always wind the clock on a kickoff. He's going to always wind it unless it's, one of those it's an onside kick or something like that. But even on a pooch kick, he's going to always wind his clock. It's the referee's decision whether or not he's going to ask his wings to move up if we're going to go into onside kick formation. So it's important that you see this. The referee should always also be stopping the clock after every kickoff. He'll start it and he'll stop it. All right. Because he's following up the play. He should be mirroring that stoppage of the clock. Those are things that need to be noted. If you don't see them consistently doing that in their evaluations, I think it needs to be noted in the evaluation. Let's see. So this is, and I think you guys are going to have access to this presentation, but this is the pre-snap routine and where the referees need to be after the ball's kicked. They're gonna trail the play and move forward with that. And I think I've already talked about that a little bit. On scrimmage plays, and I know it says this is the same for 6 and 7 person. That's the great thing. For the referees, really nothing changes for referees from 6-person to 7-person mechanics. And so again, they should be 12 to 14 yards deep and 3 ticks wide from the spot of the ball on the passing arm side always. And when I say 3 ticks wide, so if we're putting the ball down on the left hash, 3 ticks wide would mean that the referee would be standing on position 2. If he would be standing on the right goalpost. That is an easy way for you as evaluators to be able to tell whether or not they're in the right position. If we have a right-handed quarterback and we're on the left hash, on the left goalpost, they should be on the right hash. In the middle of the field, between the numbers and the right hash. If they're on the right goalpost, they should be basically at the numbers or the top of the numbers. And if it's on the right hash, they should be on the numbers depending on where the 9-yard marks. We have talked a lot about making sure that referees are wide and that they are 12 to 14 yards deep. I see a lot of referees who are too deep and not wide enough, and we talk about it a lot. So that's very, very important. The other thing that I talk about a lot at camp is that when the referee's pre-snap routine, how he gets it started, and making sure that when he and the umpire are counting the players, that they confirm the count together. They just don't one signal and another signal. They need to be confirming, and that means they're going to hold up their count until they get a confirmation back from one or the other. All right. So again, those things are important. The referee's keys are going to always be the offside tackle unless he has trips to his passing arm side. All right. And he's got everything to the line of scrimmage. After the ball goes down past the line of scrimmage, then he's kind of staying with the meat and potatoes and cleaning up after that. The one thing that we talked about at camp for referees is when the ball is going towards the sideline that is away from them, that they are running down the yard line and turning at a 45 and going upfield. They're not meandering and going at an angle to that spot. One of the biggest challenges for referees is when that ball does go out of bounds on the far side, and they're responsible for that quarterback and they're moving that direction. We need to see the referees being engaged on those plays. Some are going to hustle more than others, but I think it's important that we see a referee engaged in those type of situations. If they're just standing on the throne, sitting back there and not really involved, it's kind of hard for me to think that they're engaged in the game and that they're really putting forth the effort that the referee should. But this is the pre-snap routine. This is where they should be, and this is what you should be looking for at the very beginning of every play. All right, on the scrimmage play. Scrimmage kicks. Again, I see a lot of variation with this on film, and we talk specifically about it. The positioning is 5 to 7 yards deep and wide from the punter, and you're always on the kicking leg side. All right. And we are also giving a count, and we're also giving the snapper protection signal back to the umpire. Okay. The one thing that always comes up when in a referee's position is when they've got their back to the goal line, and if the ball's at the 3-yard line or they're snapping from the 3 or they're snapping from the 5, they're snapping from the 7. All right. What I tell the referees and what I would tell you as evaluators, they need to be at the line that is the most at risk for them. All right. So if they're snapping the ball from the 5-yard line, with their back to the end line, they need to be on the end line pretty much. All right. Even though that's a little, if the punter is back there deep, they need to probably be on the end line. If it's from the 5 to the 10, they're probably going to be, they're not going to be on the end line, but they're going to be closer to the end line than they are the goal line, because the end line is the line that is most important for them. The wings have got the goal line in that particular case. If they're snapping it from the 10 out, they're probably going to need to be closer to the goal line than they would be the end line, depending on where the punter is. So just be, don't be a real stickler on those situations. Those are tough places, and every referee moves a little different. Just if they've got the good width and they're, then let's be a little bit lenient with that. Certainly you can mention it, but I wouldn't ding them for that. I would, because that's a tough place for everybody to be. The other thing that always gets brought up at camp is if the ball is kicked out of bounds, we know in the air, the referee is responsible to chop that in. And sometimes if the punter is under duress, he may or may not know, but we are asking the referee to, when the ball is going out of bounds, to move to where the kicker kicked the ball, to raise his hand and chop it in. All right. So again, if he's got a lot of pressure on him, he may or may not be able to do that. But I mean, and they'll work that. Hopefully the crews have got that worked out. They'll use their radio communication to be able to do that. But that is very important. The other thing I wanted to go back as I thought about this, as I was talking about that, is on scrimmage plays and intentional grounding. And when I say intentional grounding, there's a lot of variables involved with that, as you well know this year. But even so, if they are throwing the pass to an area where they're not sure whether there's a receiver because they have a quarterback that is under duress, you guys use some common sense with that when you're evaluating the referees. I mean, that's a crew call. I mean, it's the referee's call, but it's a crew decision, and there's a lot of information that needs to be given in that respect. And so, don't beat them up over that. You might mention it, and I would just say too that if you're mentioning something, in your evaluation, and you're not dinging them for it or you're not downgrading them for that, mention it. If you're downgrading them for something, you don't necessarily have, but that's fine. But if you're mentioning something that's in their evaluation and you're not giving them a downgrade for it, then I would say to mention it. So they can't come back and say blah, 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 because it happened one time. Some of these schools, the quarterbacks are difficult to determine, right or left-handed. I remember being evaluated about 3 years ago. And the particular team that we were calling, they had 3 quarterbacks. They were all, that one was right, 2 was left, and they all looked the same and they had different numbers. And so, I mean, if that happens consistently for like an entire quarter, then that's a problem. But if it's one series or if it's a few plays, I don't know if that's worthy of being dinged over. I think that's worthy of mentioning. But I think you get my point with that. But again, scrimmage plays, scrimmage kicks, this is basically, the pre-snap routine. Extra points, again, positioning, even with a kicker and 10 yards wide facing the holder always. And what I have told the referees all year is that if they're doing a try for point and they're kicking from the 3 and the holders on the 10, go to the hash on the 15-yard line. That needs to be your starting position, unless they're offset, But that's generally a good spot. That's going to probably be right even with the kicker, maybe a yard or half yard back. We also talk specifically again about counting and about giving the snapper protection signal. The other thing we talked a good bit about, we see a lot of schools doing the swinging gate, and this can be a little bit of a challenge, for crews. But the referee should be in the middle of the field if a team is using the swinging gate. He would blow it in. If they're waiting for him to blow it in, he would blow it in. He can either count before or after that, whatever his preference is. If they stay in the swinging gate and then run out of it, he's just going to stay right there. If not, as soon as they move, then he will move to whichever side of the field that he needs to be on. Again, we talked a lot about that this summer. They should know that. And hopefully if they've done their homework and they're a good crew and they they won't get caught off guard by this. This will be part of their scouting report that they would have done on these teams before they get there, or it'll be a question that they ask the coaches before the game. Hey, do you guys do the swinging gate? Just so they're aware of making sure where they need to be for that particular situation. I mean, there's really not a lot to talk about it from a positioning perspective as it relates to that. And then basically what we did is we went straight through the manual and we looked at everything that they should do. We talked about it. We went through it. We talked about it. And honestly, there is no excuse for any referee that went to camp this summer or in the previous summers not to know the positioning and where they should be for 7-person mechanics in these situations. I took questions. We talked about it. There's absolutely no reason why. All right. And so really, that's really all that I have for you. I talked a lot about having the right people, the right attitude, the right work ethic, being at the right place, the right calls, the right expectations. We talked about the process. I showed them the rubric itself, and we talked about it. So we all left there, unless they didn't say anything, they all had an understanding. And it's going to be even closer this year than it was last year, simply because we're doing 1/10 of a point rather than 5/10. And so the little things will matter this year as it relates to the playoffs. And so really, I mean, unless you guys have some questions, and I understand that y'all are really focusing on mechanics, and we've talked about penalty enforcement in the past as well. As you know, the referee is responsible he is the judge when it comes to penalty enforcement. And if crews screw up penalty enforcement, I know there's a category for that in the rubric, unless it has changed. But I'm telling you, a referee is going to be it needs to come off of him more so than anybody else. And so you gotta cross every T and dot every I if you want to be a state championship referee in the Georgia high school. Our football's too good. And I just, I think that we need to make sure that we're really holding these guys accountable to the manual, and really rating them on mechanics. And so, and I know that we talked a lot about making sure that your crews handle the ball and do ball rotation well. And so I know maybe the wings and the deeps will talk about that some, but I mean, I gave them the formula for a good way to be able to do that. If a crew can't handle the ball and can't move it very well, I don't know what that says about them, but to me, it doesn't speak well. So just at any rate, that's really what I have for you guys today. And if you have any questions about the referee position, I'll be glad to answer them. Well, I guess I was either really bad or really good. So
did really good.
All right, thanks.
All right. I hope everyone's paying attention.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
I
can never see Dr. Bodie.
Do we want to?
Hey, let's say you go up to Gilmer County and you're officiating that offense. I would think that 15 yards would be too deep.
Well, they shouldn't be 15 yards at all. So they should be 12 to 14.
Well, 14 may be too deep for that offense.
Well,
absolutely, it's too deep.
You adjust according to what kind of teams you have.
And I made those comments on evals, not as a criticism, but maybe you should consider this kind of thing.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Rick. If you got a team running the wing tee and the referee is constantly at 14 yards and he's just standing there,
He's missing
That's
something.
probably that's probably not the kind of guy. That's not. It's not good. He
Yeah.
does need to be tighter, and quite honestly, he might even be 11 yards. It just depends. I mean, you don't see that wing tee as much. I mean, in North Georgia as you do down in South Georgia. But when I referee a game from South Georgia, I'm a lot tighter than I am if I'm refereeing, somebody up here. But again,
So
a referee needs to be able to adjust to that.
I've made those comments in my evals, not as a criticism, but say you might want to consider this kind of thing. That's all I'm bringing up. I think that's a legitimate thing to say to anybody. You might want to consider this. And the
And
other,
just so we
fair.
get it on tape, Dr. B and Greg, tight, I don't do white hat, never want to do a white hat, even though I'm wearing one right now. But why do they need to get a little bit tighter when they see sort of a veer or wing tee type offense? What's the rationale?
Well, the reason being is that they're just a little too far. They're too far away from the play, and they're going to run it, and they're going to make all these fakes and all that stuff, and just not being able to see the ball. So if you're tighter in those situations, it just puts you in a better position to be able to actually help your crew in those situations with the officiating that you need to do.
and you've
Greg,
got one.
I don't want anybody any closer than 12 yards. It's 12 to 14.
Okay.
That's it.
Gotcha. Any other questions for me? All right. Dr. Simon, Apprentice Reynolds, take off.
All right,
Yes,
let's share. Put it in slideshow mode. Can you all see my screen?
Good job.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. First step down pat. All right. So David and I are going to go through most of what we shared with the wings. It is either taken directly from the mechanics manual or in the spirit of what is written in the mechanics manual. And some things we will say more than once on purpose. I want to just preference this, and I'm Kenny Simon for those who don't know me. There is a lot of subjectivity in how the wings are evaluated. I've helped to write the mechanics manual for the last, 10 years. And when I get reviews, I don't even know how to respond to some of the feedback, right? And sometimes it's things that seem like they're sort of specific to a particular organization, not to anything that David and I talk about in camp, right? And David and I work pretty hard to put all this stuff together and do the camps. So we want to take some of the subjectivity out so that we can be pretty consistent in the feedback that we're given, because last year, I know I got some feedback. I didn't know how to even respond to it. I wasn't sure what to do with it. So I just kept doing what I normally do. So I'm Kenny Simon. I'll let David introduce himself, and then we'll just sort of jump through this. Please ask questions because the wings are visible, quite visible, and I think they make or break crews. And so we want to make sure you're clear on what we're going to talk about. Mr. Reynolds?
Hey, I'm David. Hello.
I'll try to be brief because you've been lecturing all day in class. We're not having it.
Trying to catch up. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll get through this real quick. So here's a quick agenda. This year we talked about taking it to the next level. You know, we really hammer the mechanics every year. We have points of emphasis every year. And we were telling the people, like, look, this is a playoff camp. Like, David and I shouldn't have to talk about basic mechanics. Read your manual, right? And so we were talking about things that required a little bit more judgment. We talk about this spectrum of judgment we have that's very wide, and we want to narrow that every year. We just want to get a little bit, more narrow on our judgment. So we were talking about taking it to the next level. So we'll start this with a little bit of new guidance for 2023. So David will take us through that. Switching sides may impact how you evaluate. Want to make sure you're aware of that. See somebody punching one half, not punching the next half. Might be because they switch sides. We have these philosophies around mindset and mechanics that we want to talk to you about. It may help you in the spirit of how you evaluate or what that wing is thinking about or what they've been doing all season. And we have a message for the evaluators in here a couple of times. And then we're going to go through the game, right? It's the runs and sort of how we want people to cover the runs and the passes and, you know, your keys, punts, and then my favorite, goal line mechanics. That is where a lot of crews get beat up. Bothers me. All right, David, let's jump in with you here on the next few slides.
Yeah, so I appreciate the switching mechanics that we've been doing all year long, and everybody, no matter what position you've been a part of, you're aware of this slide, the next slide, and these mechanics. But as far as the PEB is concerned, like Kane just said, right, you got to know where your line judge is, and it's no longer line judge side versus headline judge side, right? The way you're assigned an arbiter or whatever platform we're using, that's who you are the whole game. So at the top of your screen in the first half, your line judge is up there. We'd expect he or she to punch backwards all game long. In the second half, right, they flip-flop, so the person at the bottom of your screen, your line judge bottom of your screen, would punch. So that'd be the big piece there that you would notice on the PEB. Next slide there, Kenny, please. If we go to measurements, right, rare spot that we get that on actual huddle film. But if we do, right, the goal there would be the umpire walks with the chain crew side all night long. So you might see a different person there walking off of that penalty. That checks and balances would be a thing on film potentially that we could see with the new flip-flopping of sides. You know, the down and distance, right? If we get a 20-yard play, say it's first down and 10, we had a 20-yard play, and the person on the chain crew side just get a dead ball signal when it's clear as day of first down. To me, that's a point of separation, right? If we know down and distance from the line of scrimmage peoples that either person can stop the clock, and that's appropriate. You know, if it's at the line to gain, the press box side person's always primary on stopping the clock. But, you know, for sure, first down, you know, how do you separate crew A versus crew B? You know, the little things like Greg just said and Kenny just said are a big help there. So the things you'll see on the PEB, right? We still want the line judge only punching on laterals, required to punch them backwards. It's preferred to punch them forward on passes behind the line of scrimmage. The headline judge should only punch on an option feed off tackle. We get a late pitch backwards by the quarterback. We expect the headline judge. So just with the switching sidelines mechanics, know who is where, know where you're at in the ball game with who should be punching and not. And to me, this is a dingable offense, and the fact that we've been talking about this since Kenny and I had hair. So I think this is the thing that we can hold them accountable for their actions. You know, the grand scheme of things, right? Is the coach going to know? Is TV going to know? Probably not. But again, my opinion for the PEB is a big job the PEB has is separating the good from the great from the best. And we want the best to be on TV the last week of the season. And so some of these little things will hold one crew up or one crew down based on what we're doing. All right, any questions on switching sidelines? I know some sub-varsity concerns we've heard all year long. Don't care about that. Your playoff peoples should have no issue with this by this point in the season. And then for spots, you know, based on our total film, the quality we get based around, you know, based on who you have across the state, this is tough. But we at the camp we talked about giving everybody what they earned and nothing more. And so just make sure that, you know, if it's a half spot, it's a half spot. It can be a first down the middle of the field or a second down the middle of the field. And if they don't gain that line, let's not give it to them. I had one last week. The guy's head's laying on the big line of a 50. And it's clear as day the ball is not there. And so we would do an injustice of giving that extra half spot. I know that makes it more challenging for penalty enforcement and first downs and this and that, whatever. But again, if we're playoff quality officials, we should be able to handle this. Umpires, I'm sure Rob will reiterate this, but at camps, the wings and the umpires on the same page about umpire putting the ball down with the line of scrimmage. People give them that spot. Again, it's not too quality or two film quality angles. It's tough to see sometimes, but sometimes we can see this clear as day. And we just hit on this at camp that spots are very important for line of scrimmage people.
All right. All right. So I want to cover real quick sort of one of the pieces of this sort of philosophy that David and I have, and it's around sort of mindset, this first one. So we don't think there's any excuse for not knowing your mechanics. Being in the right position gives them the greatest opportunity to see what they need to see. Now, let me say something about being in the right position. We get a lot of, it's very subjective when people call an official, you look lazy, right? You look lazy. Like, that's always been strange to me, because the higher you go up in officiating, it seems like the slower they move on the line of scrimmage. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot happening. I want to avoid that. If the official is in the correct position, walking, shuffling, doesn't matter to me which one, but they are there to see what they need to see. Let's avoid dinging people because they look lazy, right? I don't run a lot when I'm in my games. It has to be a long run, right? I want them to know their mechanics and be in position to rule on a play. I don't care if they run a 4-2 getting there. That's not what we're doing. We want the play covered. They need to be able to communicate, and sometimes you'll be able to tell whether or not they have done that, but we know communication can eliminate a lot of issues. Hustle versus hurry. This goes back to the comment I just made about calling people lazy. We don't want them hurrying. Don't care how fast they run. We get slower every year. Kids get faster, right? And so I don't want them getting too close to the play because they were trying to impress the PEB by showing how quickly they could run on a, get down the field on a 50-yard run, right? And they're twisting ankles and pulling hamstrings, right? So we want them hustling versus hurry. We want them to look relaxed and confident, right? I don't want you to misconstrue that as being lazy, right? They need to have their pre-snap routine like clockwork. It should be something that's almost as natural as breathing, because they've been doing it all season. They're checking the clock. They're doing all these different things. I only want them moving when needed. We see this a lot with the headline judges. They read pass and they move. That's annoying, right? Most plays, the headline judge does not need to move. Most, right? Some of the things that David and I talked about, I let my key get 10 yards away from me and they're still running before I start moving, right? So most plays, they don't need to move. But I can tell, looking at film, that people have been told, you read pass, you start moving downfield. Then a pass is thrown 3 yards behind them by some tight end dragging. Now they're in front of the play and out of position. Or the ball gets dumped to a little running back in the flats, or just behind the line of scrimmage to their side, and they're out of position. They only need to move when they need to move. And also, here's another nitpicky thing. Don't tell people to get to the top of the numbers to get a spot. I think I got dinged by that. Oh, you need to be further into the field to get a spot. No, you don't. 2 or 3 steps onto the field, reserve your energy, get a spot, dead ball, signal, you're good. People sprinting into the top of the numbers to give a spot is just a waste of energy. And it makes you look like a rookie to me. Doesn't look good to me. Okay? So, one of the things David and I have been talking about for several years now, good wing officials dominate all those pre-snap penalties and issues, right? A legal formation is a fundamental tenet of the game. You've been hearing me say that for years. I say it every year. I'm going to keep saying it. Can't play without a legal line of scrimmage. So we need to have that. Get those false starts, encroachments, shifts, motions, all of those things, like dominate that, makes you look good, right? And then we want them calling impact versus nitpicky fouls. So if you see a small hold on the backside of the play, or even on the front side of the play, and it didn't really impact the play much, let's not ding them in the penalty administration because they missed 7 holds, right? Let's not do that. We want impact fouls, big fouls that impact the plays. David, this is you.
Yeah, so again, from the PEB side of things, I'm going to reiterate one thing for Kenny, right? So for me, what separates line of scrimmage officials from the rest of the pack, and one is that pre-snap routine, that pre-snap stuff, right? Your formations, your false starts, your encroachments. How do we handle that? we get a play where 22 players or it's 4th and an inch, and then we get a dead ball foul for encroachment. Well, yeah, but all offsides, right? It's just part of the formation. We know what's coming, right? And so, you know, how can we handle all the pre-snap stuff and how we get those correct? Do we use preventive officiating, right? If the formation is suspect early, can we work on getting that receiver on or off where they're supposed to be? Those things really separate 1 versus 2. And then obviously your hustle, like Kenny said, right? Walking looks bad, period, no matter what position. But in the same sentence, if it's a 2-yard run and a cloud of dust, then maybe we do take 2 steps down and then walk right in. Perfect. So hustle, pre-snap stuff, and then spots. And so talk about spots a little bit earlier already about, give them everything they own, they've gained, and nothing else. Square in that crossfield mechanic routine that we're all very familiar with, no matter what position we're part of, are good on spots. We already talked about passes, right? Line judge, depending on where that person is, right? What half we are with the mechanics change this year. Please pay attention to that. I know my association already does in-house evaluations, and the evaluators have already lost who is where. So please just make sure if you're in the first half or second half. Again, the book says line judge punches all backward passes. It's preferred to punch them forward. My opinion would be, at the camp, I say, my opinion is we punch all laterals, no matter forward or backwards. It helps give that ruling on the field quickly. And Kenny's already said it, headline judge, stop moving so much. And you might say, well, who's going to watch that crossing, that linebacker level of passes and OPIs and all the above? Statistically speaking, we get worse spots when we're moving down the field for no reason, coming back to the spot. We also get lower quality of holding DPI, OPIs if we're moving downfield for no reason. So for those who have been officiating before Dr. Bodie, again, the norm now is to the headline judge, slow down. And like Kenny said, for keys, right, once your cat goes downfield 10 yards, if a good football coach draws up a good football play, you've got somebody else coming to your area code, maybe a back out of the backfield, all that kind of stuff. So just understand that. And then again, Kenny mentioned about not coming to the numbers. 100% agree. The only difference would be line to gain and goal line. We really want to see those 2 winged officials on 3rd and 4th down line to gain, or any goal line play, crashing in there with the spot, selling that spot. I understand the film cuts off early in a lot of places, but we should still see a couple steps off that sideline in most situations. I'm good with that.
Right. Thank you. So this is a message specifically for you PEB evaluators. This is your slide. So when you are evaluating, if you have to slow it down frame by frame to see if the wing officials missed a false start, you do not have a false start. Okay. You have to slow it down. Let me go back and look again. Right. You don't have one. Let's not do that. If you see illegal formations, in particular, like where ones are like, you have someone in that gray area, right? We try not to do that. We want them either on the line or as a back, but every now and then it's kind of hard to tell, maybe when it's earlier in the game. If you see it once early, don't ding them, right? If it's egregious, get them, right? But if it's kind of in the gray area, don't ding them. But if it doesn't get cleaned up, ding them, right? And so, but I would say to them, I would write something like when I was on the PEB, I wrote very thorough evaluations, and I would say, hey, good job, because on play 7, I saw the line not clean. And when they came back to it on play 77, looks like you had a conversation, line of scrimmage looked better. Okay. Consider the camera angle. David mentioned that earlier. On these holds, big holds, we only want big holds. I know they're, pretty subjective, but point of attack. We want that. If it's away from the ball, somebody has to be getting tackled on the backside. It has to be a safety issue, right? A takedown, right? Okay, and then David mentioned this earlier as well. For penalty enforcement, the umpire will always walk with the chain side official, okay? And then I don't have to beat this drum much, but remember, the switching sides may impact the inconsistency that you think you're seeing, right? Hey, the chain side official was punching great in the first half, and then the whole second half, he or she stopped doing it, right? Just check your thinking a little bit. Is that because we're switching sides, this year, okay? And then on judgment calls, whether that's holds, DPIs, forward backwards pass, fumble, no fumble, catch, no catch, please have something that is completely evident on film before you ding someone. We get a lot of, well, it probably, right? We shouldn't use words like that in evaluations, right? In any type of assessment. You saw it or you didn't see it, right? Don't tell us what you think may have happened. So if you're gonna ding someone on things like that are judgment calls, I think you should have some clear evidence on video and not make any assumptions. David, your favorite stuff.
Yeah, so for free kicks, right, kickoffs, nothing changes here. As far as the PEB is concerned, kind of a big mechanical separation might be that line, that goal line of stay on the goal line until no longer threatened. And, the ball's, the receiver goes to the 10-yard line and the kick's coming down at the 10-yard line, the goal line is still threatened, right? I mean, he muffs that kick, he whiffs on that kick, where the ball bounces going right to that goal line. So from the PEB perspective on free kicks, it's definitely that goal line being threatened. And then also, officiating error, right? That's definitely a place here where the 7-person mechanics take place, where you kind of go to the zone very quickly. You're looking for threats. It's very possible. Again, y'all have been to camp, you know what we're talking about here, but how these zones shift left and right, up and back, depending on where people are. What the last thing for kickoffs I have is, if we miss a free kick spot, he runs for 30 yards, 40 yards, and we miss a spot for 1 yard, I don't care.
Not a big deal.
Right. That's kind of the one time where spots are not nearly as important as a normal scrimmage down. So they miss a spot by 1 yard. Make a note of it. Sure, that's fine. Hey, why can't we get the spot correct? It's not a dingable offense. We miss a spot by 5 yards. That's a big problem on any play, including free kicks. So again, double teams, right? Unless it's a safety concern, like Kings talked about the holds, double teams applies a lot on free kicks. But again, wide open space. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen on free kicks. But 2 points of emphasis for me is, one, stay on that goal line a little longer, and then also if we miss a spot by a half yard, 1 yard, it's not that big a deal on free kicks.
Thanks, David.
I want to say one thing about free kicks. Doing NFL stats, I can tell you this for a fact. They'll get a spot on a free kick, and then the guy up in the booth will tell them to move it a yard.
Yep.
And it happens over and over again. So don't make that a big deal, because it happens at every level.
Yeah, thanks for that, James. All right, David, I want to cover these first three, and I want you to get the last two on this one. We'll go through these quickly. This is a busy slide, but we're talking about run plays now, right? And so it's funny, like some teams throw it a little bit more these days, but they're dinking and dunking, right? They're throwing it to a guy in the backfield. They're sort of dinking it, short. It's almost like those are some teams' run plays, right? And so there's some things we want these wings to be processing. And so as you're watching, this is what they should be doing. They're counting the offensive, players in the backfield. You shouldn't see anyone doing balanced and unbalanced signs and signals. I still see that sometimes. That's from several years back. And I also hear coaches saying they don't have 7 on the line of scrimmage. And I chuckle. I never address it. I'm not going to correct them, right? So we want to see the player closest to the wing official. If they are off the line, we do want to see them punch. If they have 2 people off, we'd like to see 2 fingers. I wouldn't ding them over that. But I would say something. If the first time someone close to them is off, they don't punch, I would say something about that. If you see it cleaned up, maybe you make a comment, but don't ding them. But we do want to see that happen, making sure they're punching off. 2 fingers or 3 fingers, depending on how many players they have off the line of scrimmage. Again, clean line of scrimmage. We want them straddling. You don't want to see officials leaning to be able to see the line of scrimmage. I prefer them take a half step either direction after the line has been set so they can see what they need to see. Players are either on the line or they're a back.
You got a quick question, Kenny, on the punch. If you've got a vertical stack of, you got the guy on the line, next guy back, and maybe another one behind him, are we punching anybody or not?
You know what? So that one, I normally wouldn't punch, but sometimes you get a kid who's a little bit outside of the stack and someone maybe they do. I wouldn't ding those either way, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I wouldn't ding those either way.
I'm not looking at it from a ding standpoint. I'm just thinking, from a general mechanic standpoint.
Yeah, we tell them not to, but I still see it because it depends on how the kid lines up, right?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I try to not put my arms out as much as I can. So, look, when we look at those linemen, we want, you're either on the line or you're off. There is no in between. They watch a lot of college and NFL football where, the players get in the gray area. This is not that. This is high school. You're either on that line or you're off. I like to have conversations with the coaches prior to a game, especially teams from South Georgia that come up and, they have a lot of those teams that come up from South Georgia. They run those option offenses and they want to get those players tight. They have those sort of wing players in those veered offenses. And I tell them I need to see space between the backs and the linemen. And I usually get we've been doing it all year. Well, it's the playoffs. We need to clean that up. So let's make sure that's clean. And then they're looking at a couple of things. Like they need to be aware of, I like for them to know the numbers of like tight ends and tackles, right? Who's eligible, who's not, who's covered up. What are your keys, your initial ones anyway? The motioning and shifting. And looking at cut blocks, pulling linemen, putting your eyes there to see what's happening, right? And so just this one bullet has so many things in it. This is why we don't like our line of scrimmage officials moving very much. They are processing a lot. David and I joke about us being the smartest people on the field. There's a lot happening on the line of scrimmage, as some of you know. You're muted, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, so I'll reiterate one thing about the formations and Dr. Bodie. Please don't listen to this process while I'm discussing this. We want to make formations legal if we can. Okay, and so what they've been taught at camp the past couple of years is the wider we get, we're looking for a blade of grass, or looking for a stagger between the receivers to make that legal. Okay, the closer we get to the ball, right? So your tight ends, your tackles, your wing backs, we need a lot more of a legal formation there to make it legal. So I want to harp on again, several complaints from camp was the PEB, I'm not defending a side, but we're dinging formations that clear as day on film, on the field are legal. You get on the film and it looks a little different, but we could probably still give them some grace. So again, preventive officiating, the big piece, like Kenny said, for formations. You saw play 3 versus play 70. It's cleaned up, no big deal. Even if the first warning, right, the first gray area formation happens to be on the game-winning touchdown, right? The idea is still that's their first time they've been in a gray area formation. We warn them, and then we're good. Okay, so kind of just want to echo some complaints from the summertime on that. If you've been on line of scrimmage before, which most of us have, right, either varsity or sub-varsity, kind of what I'm talking about with that. So, all right. Anyway, situation awareness. A lot of we already covered. Line of game, right? Who closes in, pitches in, who stops the game clock on first downs, or big situations where if I know down and distance, again, I'm trying to separate A versus B or team, crew 1 versus crew 2 are a big deal. Spots to the 2, right? So if the deep gets beat, sure, he might take the spot, and then I clean up as the line of scrimmage guy. But in reality, what should be happening is the deep's ahead of the play. The line of scrimmage guys are trailing the play, and we get all that. And so that kind of just generic, in my opinion, officiating stuff. Go ahead, Kenny, if you're good. Right, so pass plays. A couple things on pass plays. I think the PEB historically it's easy on film to nitpick in those receivers downfield or linemen downfield, right? So the rule book says he gets the expanded neutral zone. We're going to be in 2 yards. But we really want to make that big like other fouls we have, right? So we're looking at a +3 yards downfield of being a quality IDP. If we're at 2.5, we get a flag down. Man, that's not what we want to be doing in high school football. And again, no matter what level you officiate, we're looking for the ball being released where they have been. And so some people with the RPO, it's challenging, right? Because when the ball is thrown, boom, we see the ball thrown. We look back at the lineman, now they're 5 yards downfield. Well, on film, we back up a lot of it, and we see that they were legal when the ball was thrown. So just a rules reminder to the group there. And then again, the IDP, the receiver downfield thought process is a big deal. Other pieces about passes that we haven't covered yet, right? Slow down that catch, no catch. We're looking for that firm control. The tight sideline passes, we're looking feet up. Again, some teamwork there with the umpire and the deeps potentially, but just again the IDP thing for me from the PEB, we can nitpick that all we want to, but we want more than 3 yards downfield, right? 3 yards, we can pass on it. More than 3 yards, let's get a flag down that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep going. Punts. Hey, on punts, we all hope as line of scrimmage officials that the punt is the snap is caught cleanly and kicked way downfield. That the deeps have a lot of work to do and we have nothing to do. Correct? That's the goal there. The deeps are probably thinking, I hope this ball goes over the punter's head, so he has to officiate a whole lot of things that I don't have to officiate. But punt, the pre-snap stuff is the same. The formation is the same. What we're looking, though, is obviously our eyes take us to the shield and then the whole bad snap coverage, right? The referee, and y'all all cover that on your pre-games every single Friday night, so there's nothing new there. As far as how far we go downfield versus not, on a punt, it's boom downfield, 40, 50 yards. We're not gonna walk downfield. Okay, so the whole walking downfield a couple of yards is not what we need on film. I call it a fake jog, a fake hustle. A couple yards downfield is probably appropriate.
Yeah.
Again, the depth of the kick depends on how far we go downfield or not. And then again, I understand that the kids are fast and we are not, but your upper level line of scrimmage people should be ahead of the return. Again, if I know situational awareness, how far the ball goes downfield. My eyes are still on the field. I'm not just so concerned about the goal line, turn and run, and forget about the return and the blind side blocks, all that kind of stuff. So, the wing officials, like we talk about in camp, don't fall asleep. Definitely an area of concern where we're so focused about getting ahead of the play where we forget about the block. So definitely a dingable offense if we miss a kind of a secondary level blindside block, late hit, that kind of stuff, because the wing's so locked into the spot when it's not his. And then the last thing on punts for me is, a punt that goes right out of bounds over my head, I'm probably going to take it, right? So the whole reverse mechanical thing for the PEB, right? If the interception returns right at my feet, he goes out of bounds, I'm going to take the spot. A fumble at my feet, I'm going to take the spot. A punt out of bounds, I'll take the spot. So don't necessarily nitpick a foul, a punt, or change of possession that happens right at this line of scrimmage official's feet if they take that spot, right? Do what makes sense based on how far the deep wing is pushed back.
All right, David, last one. We only got a couple more slides, everyone.
I'm still going. All right, scoring kicks. Scoring kicks. We do want to see the line of scrimmage people's pinching in after the play is done. Okay, so this is for field goals, for PATs, any kind of scoring kick we have. We just want to pinch in and just help clean up those 22 players, make sure they go back to their sidelines. Obviously, we have the kick that's live, right, for a field goal. So we're going for 3 points. The kick is live. That would be very noticeable if we have a whistle, an inadvertent whistle. That'd be a Jay Russell problem if we have an inadvertent whistle on a scrimmage kick. And then the last one, I don't think a lot of crews talk about this pregame, right? But who has what goal line where, and if we're inside the goal line, back up. If we're inside the 20 line of scrimmage, people have both goal lines. If we're on or outside the 20-yard line, we expect the back judge, field judge, to have their goal line, and then the H and L would have the other goal line. So just 2 thoughts there. Again, copy and paste out of the book.
All right, so we're going to wrap up with some goal line, and then we just want to reinforce one more thing. So just a few more minutes. So listen, goal line mechanics going in. So communication, big thing, right? So really, I like to start, as the headline judge needs to start communicating with the crew when they get inside of the red zone, 20-yard line, right? And so deep should already be on the goal line. Once we're inside the 20, actual goal line mechanics start at the 7, right? We'll talk a little bit about if there's a line to gain here in a second, but you need to consider that, right? But goal line mechanics start at the 7. So we don't give up the goal line. We back all the way out to the track if we have to, but we do not step to the left or to the right of the goal line. We back out, straight out, okay? We want the officials to start deep, unless, the ball's on the other hash, you probably could be a little bit closer, but, if the ball's in the middle of the field, I like to see both wing officials deep. I wouldn't ding over that, but you may want to make a comment on that if you see it. They need to also make sure they're clearing out that sideline. You all know once we get deep into the playoffs, these sidelines get pretty filled up with coaches and recruits and, alumni and all of that stuff. So here's how I like to see, the goal line officiated when we're going in, and to keep the officials from moving as much as possible. Let's say we're at the 7-yard line. I do not have to see or need to see or even want to see wing officials running from the 7-yard line to the goal line. I want them staying ahead of the runner. If it's a passing team, you probably should be trying to get there if they have players running routes in the end zone, right? But the idea is to stay ahead of, let's say there's a person running the ball, we're on the 7-yard line, stay ahead of the runner. The idea is to be at the goal line once the ball gets there, in particular if it's in possession of a player. So when we're on the 7, I just sort of stay ahead of the play. When we're on the 5 and in or less, then I go to the goal line and I officiate from there. But the 7, that's a good little run to also be paying attention to what you need to be paying attention to with your eyes moving around. So I just sort of take a few steps, stay ahead of the play, and and then I try to get to the goal line. If they throw a pass, I'm there. If the runner gets there, I'm there when they get there. Okay. Passes, we stay with our keys longer, of course. Check off with the deeps, catch, no catch. That's communication again. Just make sure we're talking to our sideline partners as well as our cross-field partners. And then close plays, David talked about this earlier. Close plays, crash in. We want to communicate, right? You have some kind of communication with your umpire. I wouldn't recommend hands to the chest. Coaches are picking up on that. Maybe it's something else. But we need to find the ball. It's one thing to come in and see your umpire giving you some sort of signal, but it's on the wing official to continue to come in and find the ball before signaling, right? They can wait until you see the ball in the end zone before you give a touchdown signal. So that's goal line mechanics going in. Let's talk about going out. So we need to be heads up on a couple of things, right? Holding in the end zone, please make that big. Please make that big. Safeties, the entire ball needs to get out. For some reason this year, it's been the year of me standing on the goal line and watching these plays. I've had like 3 of them. Backwards passes in the end zone, intentional grounding in the end zone, loose balls that are being batted, who put it in the end zone. All of these things should be just sort of routine when we're doing goal line mechanics going out. All of these things are possibilities. So we want that to be a part of the pre-snap routine. This could happen so that when it does, right, they're not deer in the headlights. Okay. So here are the mechanics. Inside the 3-yard line. So from the goal line up to the 3-yard line, both wing officials will retreat to the goal line and officiate from there until the goal line is not threatened. Here's where we fall down. Between the 3-yard line and the 10-yard line, It's the headline judge's responsibility. Make sure that goal line is covered. And what we see is we're on the 7, right? And you have a quarterback literally standing in his own end zone, taking a snap, and the headline judge takes no steps back. You don't have to run to the end zone, but you should be moving in that direction, reading the play. And if the play continues to take you to the goal line, you need to be there when something happens. That's where I see a lot of officials fall down. Going out, we're on the 6 or 7 yard line, ball snap. You got a running back or a quarterback back there scrambling around, inside the 2 yard line, and defenders back there, and we're still standing at the 6 yard line. All right? You see that? Got to ding them. Because I made a whole other video about that. So everyone should know about that. So listen, here's something you may see. So I want you to have a heads up. It's rare. But let's say you have some RPO quarterback and that quarterback rolls to the right. We're on, we're doing goal line mechanics. Probably should have put this going in, or it doesn't matter going in or out. But the official that is on the play side, right? Official on the play side needs to make sure they're covering the goal line. The official on the other side can cheat a little bit to see if that quarterback, crosses the line of scrimmage to throw it. Are there linemen downfield, et cetera, et cetera. They may have a little bit of leeway on the backside, right? And it's the same thing when you're going in on a line to gain, right? If you have a line to gain at the 4, the official on the backside, maybe you don't have to get all the way to the goal line as quickly as possible. You can drag a little bit to see if they're going to make it, right? But the play side official needs to be on the goal line. Backside official can lag just a little bit. So if you see some of that, you need to make a determination on whether they're trying to make sure they're covering both a line to gain or a line of scrimmage to make sure things are clean. Hope that's clear. And then last slide, we'll open it up for any questions. Please ask all the questions that you want. This is a repeat of the slide that we talked through earlier because we want to reinforce these things. So I'm not going to read them to you again, but we did put it in here twice because we just want to make sure we're not nitpicking and that we're getting impactful things, right? False starts, slowing it down, illegal formations, camera angles, holds being impactful, penalty administration. Make sure you're aware of switching sides, and please, your judgment calls need to be visible on film. If you point to play 79 where I screwed up something, I missed a hold, I need to be able to see it pretty cleanly. That's what frustrates people when they get evaluated. Like, I see no evidence of it on film. So let's not do that. All right. Questions? Everyone's sleeping now.
Hey, I got a quick question. This is Garrett.
Roll.
Going in, goal line mechanics going in.
Mm-hmm.
If the line to gain is the 2 yard line, are we going to the line to gain or the goal line, or is one guy going line to gain, the other go? Like, what's the exact mechanic you want to see as a
yes, sir.
leader
That's
of the wings?
Great question, Garrett. I don't think you're going to miss a spot from the goal line to the 2. And we talk about this in camp, so this is really a good question. I can get all the way to the goal line. It's still the most important line. If someone gets tackled on the 2, I think I could see that, right? So that's what we tell people, like, the mechanics manual is a guide so you can, be in position to rule on a play, right? But it's not an exact science. But in that instance, I'm probably getting to the goal line, and I'm still watching for that line to gain in that scenario. David, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so Garrett, no matter what level you go to, our level, the next level, it's the same question for every crew, for every association, every conference, whatever it is, how you handle that. And what we've been telling the peoples is, like King just said a couple minutes ago, play side person, right? So let's say it's Toss Swoop McKinney, he's the headline judge. He goes to the goal line. Then the backside guy's line judge, for me, I kind of slowly come down, stop at the line to gain. Once that's cleared, we go up. So again, the goal line is the most important line on the field. However, the crew decides to handle that spot, I think, is very important. But good luck. There's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
Again, we talk to people in the MEAC and the SoCon and the SEC, and we get 5 different answers. So
you do, yes, sir. One thing you may see, let's say this happened to me in a state championship many years ago, but it was overtime, right? Where we snapping from the 15, and I think the team had gotten to the 7. And you know, they still had a line to gain at the 5. And so we made the deep stay on the it was the last play of like the second or third overtime. So we made the deep stay on the goal line. And the wing and I decided we just go to the line to gain. So you may see some things like that. What we want to see is proper coverage of that goal line. Right. Good question.
Rashad Lewis.
What's up, Rashad?
Hey, Kenny, I watched the film this weekend, and so on some of the film, some of the short wings were winding the clock on a play clearly in bounds, like almost to the numbers. Are y'all teaching the wings to still wind the clock or give a dead ball signal?
Yeah. So if it's between the numbers and the sideline, we go ahead and do that. I will tell you, I know this college reported winding is not my favorite mechanic. But you know, it's not, but we do teach that. Under the numbers, between the numbers and the sideline, we will teach wind. Now we do teach, which I have like one signal as well, right? So you get a first down and you're under the numbers, right? You kill the clock and you communicate to your white hat that the clock is hot, right? So we like to see one signal. I don't like to see people winding and then stopping the clock, right? But yes, we are still teaching to wind.
Okay, because so I'm not digging up. I'm just making a statement. So now I won't make that statement, which is, why are you winding at the number? So I will stop making that statement. So now that I know that y'all are teaching that, but just moving forward, we all change that. Y'all gonna keep that the same?
So Rashad, if the sideline is threatened, I think a clock status is important.
Yeah.
So to your point, the numbers, we got it, bro. Everybody, grandma on the 59th row understands the clock's in bounds. What are we doing? Right. But we get a first down in bounds under a minute to go in the game. Right. I would nitpick that and say, oh, he wound it and then stopped it. That tells the coach, hey, he's in bounds. We gotta hurry up. So
right.
I think situational awareness matters to that process there also.
Understood. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Kenny.
What I do want you to ding though is when that runner gets hit and they go forward and out of bounds and you see people winding. Now that when we should be killing the clock, that drives me nuts.
Same here.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. Other questions?
Hey,
my bedtime is not for 45 more minutes. I can handle more questions. Chris, you got one?
Yeah, I do have one. This is my first year on it, so I'm just trying to make sure, like, capturing these. You mentioned like illegal formations, illegal shift, those type of things. If they're missing those, that would be a ding. We're only capturing that in aspect 9, or would we capture that in the wings category?
Oh, question. Okay. I'll tell you how I did it before. I don't know if they have new guidance, but I would capture it in both places.
It's changed. So
Okay.
you have your rules interpretations, right? Your rule, your foul, no foul. That's category 9 or aspect 9, right? Your mechanical things takes place up top for whatever that position is. Now, what you could do is you can put a comment in the wing officials category and not ding them up there, right? So mechanically speaking, preventive officiating speaking, hey, wings, we have a problem with the formations here. It was never addressed. Please make sure you're talking to your captain, your tackle pregame, whoever it is, whatever it is. Maybe not a dingable offense in that mechanical side of things, right? But definitely in that rules category or aspect 9. Jay, you got a question about that? Yeah. Addition to that, sorry. You agree, Jay?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's changed this year, Chris, to answer your question. Back when Kenny started back during the Vietnam War, the PEB, the complaint was why they get dinged in 2 different aspects. It's a valid point.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page here. Yeah.
That's, David's comments is probably why he doesn't have much hair.
I was about to say, for the record, we've gone longer than the Preacher Man, which is pretty impressive.
Yes, you have. And
only
I
by
told
a
you
few
guys,
minutes though. We had
no. I was done at 3 minutes till 9.
well, we finished 8 minutes ago. So,
No, you still ain't done.
When we're completing these evaluations, are we supposed to be filling out the rubric paperwork as well as going to the MISA site, or what's the expectation there?
What's
The
your,
MIS
what's your,
site.
what's your question, Duncan?
Well, I mean, when I did my evaluation for the first film I looked at, and I did it at the MIS site and submitted it, that's really all that you guys are looking for, right?
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So when she's talking about aspect 9 and all the Excel spreadsheet stuff, that's for our guidance in getting to that point.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Now, Duncan, and for the group, I don't mind sharing how I've always done my film review process. I'll have Huddle pulled up and a Word document pulled up, right? And I'll start on the Word document, play 3, and then I write my comment on whatever it is, right? Field judge, blah, blah, or a crew, blah, blah. And I do the whole Word document straight through for all, whatever the whole game is called. And then I copy and paste that into the MIS. And I try to find a category or aspect, that it fits to that process. When I get done with that, then I'll score each aspect that has comments. And then the aspect that does not have comments, kind of go back and say, I've got nothing here. Cool. I got no score. Or I'll type in a secondary comment that's maybe not attached to a specific play, but just additional comments to fill that aspect in and score that aspect. If that makes sense. That's how I've always done it.
It does. I was actually using pen and paper because I'm old. And no, I can do a Word document. I just didn't like toggling back and forth. I was just working with the film, and basically different means to an end, but the same goal is accomplished.
Yeah, the goal for sure, and I'll shut up after this. Feedback is critical, period. And Jay will know this in a couple of weeks, right? The only complaints usually for the PEB to the crew is how can they score this so low with only 1 or 2 plays? And so I challenge this group that's on here tonight is you can't give. There's no way you can give too much feedback in these comments. And so I challenge this group again. Feedback is critical. That's the biggest complaint. Whether that crew goes to the next round or not, it'll make that crew better next year. And so that's the end goal. Also, right, is to improve the level of officiating across the state. So definitely feedback is critical. And then also, as you're scoring people's across the state, right? I think Greg hit on this a few minutes ago or an hour and a half ago. Who do you want that crew at the bins in December? And then as you're scoring, whatever your caliber or calibration is for scores, right? Is that the crew who you want to be on TV representing the rest of us on the top 8 games of the season? So those are my last 2 thoughts for the PEB.
Are we done? Any other questions about wings, or you got David on here to answer PEB questions? Any questions for referees? We want you all clear on these 2 positions. These are the 2 best presentations you're going to get. I think Clyde's on here. Him and Adam are going to suck. So this is the best you're getting. Better ask your questions.
Will we get a copy of these slides?
They're up on the training website now.
Okay.
Right?
I saw these 2. I didn't see the umpires and deep guys on there.
Not yet.
So that was more
Yeah, they're always slow. Those guys are just slow. Period.
They'll be up there at some point. Like, they have to.
We're always waiting on a ball
tomorrow?
or something.
Yeah, they'll be up there. I know I'm going to take all of these, and I'm going to, by position, our playoff officials are going to have to watch these. I don't know about the recordings. I don't know if James still on. He wants to say what he's going to do with these recordings, whether or not we make these available. But at least the decks will be there.
We're going to put these online on the YouTube website.
Good deal.
And just like what David said, all these evaluations are to help. They score the best, but they're to help everybody.
And honestly, the PEB board has been played a big role in helping the Georgia high school have the best state championship. I mean, officials. I mean, it has just gotten so much better in the last 10 years or so. I mean, it really does matter what you do, and it's a big time commitment. Thank you for it, but it really will matter.